geek. Cleveland and the geek. Talking baseball every week. Because the Cleveland and the geek.
And welcome to Cleveland and the Geek, presented by Black Stack Brewing. Really good beer, really near you. I'm John Bonus of Twins Daily. With me, Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic.
You are not at all near me, John.
I am not near you at all.
Maybe
they've stuck me into the quote-unquote podcast studio at Hadman Stadium here, meaning the radio station with the garage door that doesn't work.
Yeah, there's garage door windows in all of the booths. And we didn't break it, though, right?
No, we did not break it, as far as I know. As far as they know, we did not break it.
Right. Well, let's stick to that story, because this could be testimony here,
That's right,
potentially.
yeah. That's right.
We have passed the halfway point of spring training. We are now less than 3 weeks from opening day for the Twins, which is March 26th in Baltimore against the Orioles. And you start to get into these, not that we're haggard veterans of covering spring training, but you do it a few times and you realize this kind of middle ground where the novelty has completely worn off.
Right, yeah, that's right.
The players are sick of talking to the media, which I don't blame them for.
The media is sick of talking to the players because most of them have fled, just so we're clear.
Right.
I am the lone regular down here for tonight's game versus the Braves with Bailey Ober on the mound. So
that's a sad state of affairs.
That is the sad state of affairs. Twins Daily is the lone covering it.
Yeah, just as we all predicted 10 years ago. But also the games themselves, they never had meaning, but at least the first ones, it's like, oh, I saw so-and-so.
Sure.
Well, now you've seen everything there is to see. We're still at the point where the roster battles are not, are not going to conclude anytime soon.
Sure.
And so we saw we've seen 2 rounds of cuts, technically. One were a couple injury guys, and then 6 guys, including Walker Jenkins, who's injured. We can talk more about that in a second. So even the cuts aren't that interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's this middle ground where the goal really is don't get injured any more than you already are.
Yeah, right.
And unfortunately, the Twins have failed that a couple of times already this spring with Pablo and Walker Jenkins.
Sure.
And as you get like a week from now, you can start to get a better sense of pitchers start to pitch a little longer in games. The usage of even position players, they're not always exiting in the 4th inning. Maybe they exit in the 6th or 7th inning.
Sure.
You can start to get a little bit more information to speculate and try to connect dots and stuff, but we're still kind of probably a week or 10 days away from that. And so we have some stuff to talk about, as always, but it's a weird point of spring training.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, it never mattered, but you can kind of trick yourself the first week or 2 into thinking it mattered because you missed it.
Right. Yeah.
Or it's a novelty you've forgotten about what baseball feels like, and now it's like, oh, they're playing another game. So
that's about right. Yeah.
We should also mention on the Patreon side that we're ramping up for the season 2. If you enjoy this show, the way the Patreon podcast works, Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. We do this show, which we call the Friday Free Show. And then we do usually Monday and Wednesday, usually 2 per week during the season, especially.
That's right.
As sort of premium episode. They are commercial free. They are exclusively available to our Patreon subscribers. And we do a lot more deep dives into stuff. Like some topics we might do 3 minutes here. We might do 23 minutes there. We also do mailbag, where we answer questions from listeners. And then the other thing we do, and we've been ramping that up lately, we had Derek Shelton on. We just had Matthew Leach from MLB.com on. Both were really good shows, I thought. We do a lot more interviews over there. And so if that interests you, as we get closer to the season, we would love to have you join us over there. It's $8 per month, $2 a week. You end up paying less than $1 an episode for the year if you stick with us on that. But I thought the Matthew Leach one was good because, it's good to get the perspective of someone who's been watching the same stuff that we've been watching and talking to the same people, but isn't us.
Right. I was thinking,
what I mean?
Exactly right. That's exactly what I was going to say, but isn't already coming in with our point of view. And
yeah,
although I don't remember too much about what he was saying being that much different than what we're seeing.
Well, that's fine too, because then
yeah,
we
that's
just
fine.
feel like he's confirming that we're geniuses on all these
Exactly right.
topics.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
But it was a good one because, we talked about Brooks Lee, we talked about Mick Abel, we talked about a lot of the roster crunch battle stuff. We forced him to make predictions at the end of the episode for over under and all that. We're
Yeah.
gonna get into that too later in this show. So anyway, patreon.com/Gleeman. If you like this show, you can get 2 more of these per week, basically, with guests and mailbag deeper dives, all that stuff. The occasional curse word if you're into hearing that.
That's
Who
right.
knows? Patreon.com/Gleeman. So I wanted to get into this because one of the things we talked about with Matthew, who's a great guest, was that the over under for the Twins is, in my mind, very low. Although I'm learning now. So stick with me on this. When the projections came out from like Pacoda, which is Baseball Prospectus, and Zips, which is Fangraphs, and they were right around 79, 80 wins. And then they lost Lopez for the season and they dipped to like 77, 78 wins, something like that, which I think is logical on that front. I think we were both like, yeah, that's about right, give or take. Mid to high 70s. If things go well, they can be a winning team. If things go poorly, it's another 90 loss season, that sort of range. And we discussed that for a few weeks. And then the over-unders started to come out, regardless
Right.
of
Yes.
whatever
Right.
gambling site you want to look at. And I was personally pretty surprised that the over-under was 73.5, which is at least 5 or 6 wins below what the projections were. And setting aside the Twins specific angle, it's just become increasingly uncommon to see that big of a gap because
Sure.
the truth is that the gambling sites and Vegas are deriving their over-unders from a lot of the same projection methodology and information that places like Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus are. We've talked about this over the years. 10 years ago, you would often find a 5-win gap and it would be kind of low-hanging fruit. Now it's like most of the projections are within 1 or 2 win of the over-under. Not the case here. So then, on top of that, the last week or so, I've done a couple of Twins season preview segments on other podcasts. One I did Effectively Wild with Ben Lindbergh and Meg Rowley, which is the Fangraphs daily podcast. And then the other one I did was Rates and Barrels, which is with Derek and Eno, my colleagues at The Athletic, which is more of a fantasy focused podcast a lot of the time. And so I went on, I did 20, 30-minute segment talking about the Twins, pretty standard. What I was surprised by, because both of them had me predict over-under sort of thing, and we talked a lot about projections on both. What I was surprised by is that none of the people on those shows seem to view the 73.5 over-under as low.
As weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And so that kind of, I rarely find myself on the optimistic side of anything, let alone the Minnesota Twins.
Sure. Yeah.
And I feel like even you have been less so on that side of the fence with the Twins over the last 18 months for good reason.
I think last year I picked the under and you picked the over, to be honest.
Let's not bring that up. But it made me also think about one of the things we talked to Leach about is we kind of said, how do you think this season's going to play out? And what he described was very, very similar to how last season played out, which is he doesn't think it's a bad team, but he doesn't think it's a winning team probably, which means you're probably going to get into the All-Star break maybe a few games below 500. You're going to get to the trade deadline maybe a handful of games below 500. That is going to probably motivate the front office to have another sell-off, if not a fire sale, with the remaining guys, whether that's Joe Ryan, Ryan Jeffers, maybe as deep as Byron Buxton, we'll see. And then he kind of said, well, and I expect the whole thing to just fall apart after that. Well, that's precisely what we saw in the past season, whereas they were just sort of run-of-the-mill not good through the trade deadline. Then they do the fire sale. Then they're the worst team in the American League down the stretch. You finish with 92 losses. But what we talked with Matthew about, and I think is worth highlighting, is I do also kind of think that might be what we see just in terms of a big picture path for this season. But the difference is when they traded 10 guys at the deadline, they had no quality or upside to backfill those 10 spots, especially when it came to the bullpen.
Sure.
And so what you saw was these placeholder relievers who have no chance to even be on the team the next year, let alone future years. I think this would be a lot different because you just have like 8 or 10 different prospects who, if they're not already in the majors by the trade deadline, if you clear spots, they would be just no-brainer guys, whether it's someone like Walker Jenkins, Connor Prelip, Gabriel Gonzalez, or even deeper cuts like Andrew Morris or whatever. Like, and that's not guaranteeing that those guys are actually immediately any better than the kind of placeholder waiver wire pickups, because there is, a rookie can
Sure.
flop too, but
Right.
they certainly possess a lot more upside. And so that's where I kind of two minds on the season. I don't expect this to be a winning team. I do expect, if that's the case, they will trade away guys, but I don't know that the August and September roster that they put out will be quite as, double A or triple A caliber necessarily. And so, but also now I'm starting to rethink like what my overall view of the team is, in the sense that if I'm saying, 78 for a projection is not bad, 73.5 for an over-under seems pretty low, and then you do national podcasts that are not focused on the Twins, and they're not even batting an eye at 73.5, maybe it's the projections being, a handful of wins higher than that is, a little bit optimistic on that side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about, the idea being that they're going to be much, if they go through a fire sale, that the repeat of 2026 is going to be very similar to 2025, August and September, right?
Right.
On the one hand, yes, there's a whole bunch of prospects that are down there. On the other hand, those guys, the guys in front of them are not the ones likely to be traded. Now, they might be ones that you're not necessarily sold on, right? But I don't know that, Wallner and Lee and Larnick maybe, right? But a lot of those guys are still minimum salary guys. Now, they won't be next year. I think most of them go to arbitration, right? But the guys that are most likely to be traded are going to be Ryan and Jeffers and Ober and all of the free single year free agents, Josh Bell and Liam Hendricks.
Right.
If Chafin's still on the roster, Taylor Rogers, he's got a single year deal, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, so on the one hand, I guess I can see, okay, the bullpen guys might be replaced with some, starting pitching arms that they're moving to the bullpen or something. We haven't seen that much of that so
no,
far.
but you're not going to see it. They don't need it right now.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean,
but the other guys, like the ones that you're talking about, Jenkins and Gabby Gonzalez and Emma Rodriguez and Kaylin Culpepper, I'm not sure. I don't see them just being like, okay, well, now we're out of this. We're benching Larnick.
they're not benching guys, John. If it goes badly for those guys, that's it. They are not. If Trevor Larnick is not producing,
right,
he's not. He's barely in their plans now.
Larnick might be the one that I would agree with you on, but I'm not sure about the rest.
Oh, I think it is open season on the prime aged guys on all fronts. You're telling me if Matt Wallner's hitting 210 at the trade deadline, you think Matt Wallner's still going to be in their plans? I do not think that. I think this is. Now, I've been saying this for a while, and at some point, they have to sort of agree with me on this. You can't just trot the same core out there and expect different results. I'll even put Royce Lewis in the mix.
Yeah, well, that's why I was going to say, like, there's another one that now Royce Lewis is a little more expensive, so maybe, yeah.
Well, I don't even think it'll be a money thing.
Yeah.
I just think it'll be, if there's a third straight underwhelming season, let's say from the lineup, why are you rolling with these guys at all, regardless of the cost? And the other part is, if they do start to trade Ryan and Jeffers, et cetera, Buxton's going to want out anyway. So then you're going to clear center field for somebody.
Maybe.
I don't think there's going to be a shortage. I get what you're saying. Like, it's not a 1-for-1. You traded the right fielder so that Jenkins can take over in right field. I'm just saying, if things go badly for the first 60% of the season by the trade deadline.
Sure.
I'm not saying Lee, Keaschall. There are some younger guys in that group that I'm not saying are going to be kicked to the curb. But if the lineup is underperforming again, I think you can go across the board and be like, is Larnick in their plans? No. Is Wallner in their plans? No. Is Royce Lewis necessarily in their plans? No. I don't think all these guys are going to be bad. But I'm saying if they are underwhelming, but also maybe some of those prospects are probably up already, depending on injuries. And it's very possible that a top prospect comes up and hits 180, just like a waiver wire guy might come up.
Right.
I just think it's more from an upside standpoint. But here's the other thing. Most of the time, and I looked up this over the last 5 years, projection systems have been higher on the Twins than reality. Now, last year they missed by 15 wins or whatever it was.
Sure, right.
Now that was because of the sell-off, although I will note they were below 500
Sure. When
at
they
the
sold
trade
off,
deadline,
right?
too.
Yeah, if they would have matched the projections, there wouldn't have been a sell off, right?
Correct. So they were already on the way to being 6 or 8 or maybe more wins below the projections. But I think over the course of the last 5 years, 4 times the projections have overestimated the Twins' win total. I think it's been an average of like 8 wins per season or something like that. And so then I start to think, well, if there's some, I don't want to say bias because it's not like someone's putting their finger on the scale or anything like that. But if there's
Sure.
something about the projections that view the Twins more favorably than actually becomes reality, and maybe that's as simple as injuries being a bigger factor
Sure.
or something like that.
Sure.
Well, then the 73.5 as an over under compared to 78.5 as a projection from, let's say, Fangraphs. Well, then that starts to be pretty close.
Yeah, right.
If you're kind of building in a plus or minus of like 3 to 5 wins, that they might be overestimating them. So I don't know. It's
between the possibilities of things pivoting at the trade deadline and
Right.
just sort of the seemingly constant problem that this team has had with injuries, and several of the past years, not so much,
Yep.
maybe not so much last year, but some of the other years. You can see where the gamblers might be a little hesitant to be setting that number close to the projection system. They might have some of their own biases built in based on some recency and what they've seen from this franchise and this injury riddled team.
So the last time the Twins had a lower preseason over under than 73.5 was 2015. So over a decade ago.
Wow.
Which 2015 they had already lost 90 plus games. Three each of the last 3 seasons at that point. It was pretty bad. It got a little worse, which led to the regime change, and I think that was like 69.5 or 70.5.
Well, 2015
wins.
they actually did pretty well too. That's the funny part.
Yeah,
about
that's the surprising
2015 was the surprising year that the Sano came up and they turned into a competitive team in the second half of the season and just blew it on the last weekend. So
yes, and then there was some hope that you've moved past this kind of rebuilding phase with Paul Molitor as the manager, obviously at that stage,
right?
And then it was like, oh no, things got considerably worse from there.
Right, yeah.
Where the next season, which is 2016, was the worst they've had.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's worth noting. I mean, we talk a lot about this stuff because I think it's a good baseline setter. Not so much it should be taken as gospel, but it almost reminded me of the Mauer narrative near the mid and end of his career, where we got so, as two of, I would say, the biggest Mauer supporters throughout, we got so caught up in having to hear people locally, whether it was fans or media members, do what I would say was unnecessarily, criticize him for the contract, for the injuries and all. And so we would fight back against that almost obsessively. It became a real thing. And then like someone from ESPN or someone from Sports Illustrated or whatever would come to town to do a feature on Mauer. I've told this story before, and they'd like reach out to one of us and be like, "Hey, what's the vibes around Mauer?" And I'd be like, "Oh, half the fans hate him." Blah blah blah. They'd be like, "Really?" And then they'd start to interview people, and then the article inevitably would be like, "He's not even really appreciated in his own city."
Yeah,
and then when it came time to be in the Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Famer, like. Easy choice for the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And so this is not apples to apples, but it did remind me that in our little cocoon of, the Twin Cities, you get a narrative around the team, and I guess we're partly responsible of providing that narrative a lot of the time. And in my head, I guess I was like, well, 73.5, people are going to think, even if they're down on the Twins, that's pretty damn low. That's pretty, you hit the over on that. And then you get some people, by the way, I really respect nationally who do really good stuff are like, yeah, that seems about right. And it's like, And then I saw an article yesterday by one of my favorite writers, Mike Petriello of MLB.com, who's one of their national writers. And he did a thing ranking all the teams 1 through 30. It was kind of half what he thinks their record will be for 2026 and half just kind of the state of the team going forward, like how much enthusiasm there is or hope there is for the fans.
Sure.
And I clicked it expecting the Twins to be pretty far down the list, obviously. And I just kept scrolling and kept scrolling and kept scrolling. And they were in the last group, the 8th category. There were 2 teams. the Los Angeles Angels, who are just the most poorly run, constant non-contender there is, and the Minnesota Twins. Were
Lower than the Colorado Rockies
yes,
and the White Sox.
yes,
Ugh.
yeah. So maybe for all the feeling we have that we are maybe the most critical voice covering the Twins, and
Right.
all the crap I get from Twins people themselves for things
Maybe
we
we're
say.
not critical enough. You're saying we're too
Yeah,
Pollyanna
yes,
about this to you is what you're saying?
the Pollyanna boys, you and
That's
I.
exactly that's right.
Yeah. I'm gonna print off some of these articles next time a Twins official comes up to me, and I'm just gonna hand them a thing. That,
Pollyanna and the Punk. That's what we can. That's the new
I
name
like
of
that. Any alliteration really works pretty well here, John.
That's right.
Before we get into some lineup stuff and some news and notes from camp and all that, let's talk about our first group of sponsors here. Our first one, our presenting sponsor. They are the biggest reason why this show is available for free as the lights go out on John again. I like that for the video viewers.
That's right, yeah.
Black Stack Brewing. They've been a supporting sponsor of us. John's done events there for Twins Daily. We did a very fun podcast at their brewery, which is a great spot, huge spot, giant TV, good vibes, with Phil Miller like a month or two ago, which was
Yep.
great.
Yep.
And I'll let John speak on this. Most importantly, they got good beer.
Yeah, they've got such good beer that one of the things that has happened here in Fort Myers is I've got various places wanting me to reach out to Black Stack, other breweries down here in Fort Myers, saying we would really like to work with Black Stack. I mean, they are not just we do our best to sort of make sure that they are recognized locally for their great beer.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you within the industry, they are recognized nationally for how good their beer is, and you can get that beer any place you want because now they've got a great distributor that's in your liquor store right near you. Listen, they've got the flagships like the local 755 IPA. They've got Slopes Pilsner, which is a great one. They've also got their Nopes Pilsner, which is a non-alcoholic Pilsner. But also they have the like weekly releases of some of their specialty stuff, and it's absolutely fantastic. And if that's not enough for you, they've also got this tap room where they've got an insane number of stuff that you can't even necessarily get at the liquor store. So what I would say is, give them a pull, right? like you are blessed with a really good brewery in the Twin Cities area. You might want to take advantage of that and starting at your local liquor store. Ask for them, find their cans. You're going to find them anywhere from all over the state of Minnesota, Wisconsin, South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, etc. And then on top of that, stop by their tap room. If you stop by their tap room and you say Gleeman and the Geek, you can get a 4-pack. You get $2 off a 4-pack that you buy from their cooler there as well. So, Black Stack Brewing, thank you so much for your support, guys. All right,
Okay. Let's talk a little lineup stuff here.
Okay.
Because I feel like this whole spring we talked pitching.
Yeah, we have. The one thing I want to talk about pitching real quick though is Bailey Ober is starting tonight.
Yeah, but what is talking about it 2 hours before he starts?
I'll be very interested to see what we see from him as far as some of his velocity, because we did see him do a bullpen session, and I think everybody is very optimistic about what we're going to see tonight and where Bailey Ober is coming into camp right now.
This is a thing you do all the time, which is the worst approach to broadcasting, which is you talk about something that is imminently happening that either will or won't be good right before it happens.
Just setting it up. We'll see where tomorrow. You'll see how Bailey Ober did, and you'll see what sort of velocity readings there are. So, and if you want more on Bailey Ober's start, check out patreon.com/.
There you
on
go.
Monday. There you
now
go.
that is a good instinct to plug a Monday show on.
Just gotta stick with it, Aaron. You just gotta hang in there.
Yeah, it was all part of your real plan, the galaxy brain plan that you have going on. You're right, though. I mean, it's a big thing, but we don't need to get into it. What he's about to take the mound an hour after most people hear this. So, let's talk about the lineup. So, couple just notes. There isn't like big news on it or anything. Byron Buxton left camp, so he's not there. He's in the WBC. He hit a homer already, made a good catch already.
Right.
I'm hoping he further increases his national profile as he did last year, being in the All-Star Game, Home Run Derby, etc. That's great. On the WBC front, we already said Taj Bradley opted out. Joe Ryan is out, at least for the initial rounds, because of his sore back.
Yeah.
And obviously Pablo Lopez is not pitching for Venezuela because he's not pitching for anyone for the next year. So that's just that front. Luke Keaschall played left field
Yeah.
played anywhere in the outfield
Yeah.
for the first time since August of 2024 when he was shut down. It was planned to shut him down because he had played that whole season with elbow problems and he had Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
And prior to, I know there are people who saw that and they're like, why would you play him in left field? A, he's going to be the second baseman. B, the last thing the Twins need on the current roster is another left fielder, right? I mean, the whole thing is left fielder. I would point out a couple things on that front. One is there's no guarantee he's going to be the second baseman long term. And
Yeah.
in fact, I think I would probably take no more than 50-50 that he's the second baseman for more than a couple more years. B, prior to the elbow surgery, he played a lot of outfield. And in fact, he played center field quite a bit coming up through the minors. There were a lot of people who believe not only that he could be a better outfielder than a second baseman, that he actually might be a more viable center fielder because that's based more just on pure speed and athleticism than second base. Certainly, I think if you put him in left field, given his physical traits, he could be a Gold Glove winning left fielder, and also the arm strength that's the place where it's the least issue, basically.
Right.
But then the other thing I will say is, yes, they have, I guess this is C, they have a million corner outfielders, some of whom are going to already be, pushed off the roster because of the logjam on that front. And so, yeah,
but they're not right-handed hitting.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Right.
Like any married couple, we can finish each other's sentences.
There you go. Right. Yeah. That's it.
That's exactly right. And so, what is the logjam of left fielders? Well, it's Wallner, it's Larnick, it's Roden, it's Outman, it's Cody Clemens, fill in the blanks. And even looking maybe midseason, Walker Jenkins, Emmanuel Rodriguez, those are all left-handed hitters.
Right.
Now, they vary significantly in terms of upside, in terms of defensive ability. I'm not lumping them all in. What you're missing there is a right-handed guy who you would want to pair with any of those left-handed guys in a very natural platoon, and certainly someone like Larnick absolutely should be platooned at this point. He's shown no ability to hit left-handed pitching. Same with Wallner, same with Outman, etc. So there is kind of a utility to being able to use Keaschall even in the short term as an outfielder. Gabby Gonzalez is also right-handed. That could be a mid-season addition too. But right now, the only right-handed corner outfielders are like Austin Martin, who's not much of a hitter really, and maybe Eric Wagaman, who it's not clear he's a hitter or a viable, regular outfielder.
We have yet to see him in the outfield. Actually, we were told we were going to see him probably soon. But yeah, that is, if you are going to be pinch hitting in late innings for a left-handed hitter, right, it's probably going to be in a corner outfield spot. The truth is that Twins don't have that many right now. In the regular lineup, they have two or three regular left-handed hitters, right? They've got Larnick, they've got Wallner, and maybe they've got Clemens, right? The other ones are switch hitters or right-handed hitters, right? And so whoever you're going to have coming off the bench needs to be able, if you want to substitute for any one of them, they have to be able to play one of the corner outfield spots, right? That's most likely where they're going to end up pinch hitting for. And so, that's natural reason. Shelton has talked a fair amount about versatility and how important versatility is as he's trying to figure out what this roster looks like. We spent the whole offseason saying this roster doesn't fit together terribly well with a lot of pieces on a puzzle that when we get done, we're pretty sure there's going to be like some gaps.
And by the way, almost every move of any note that they've made, and that's a low bar, has decreased the versatility of this roster.
That's right.
Bringing back Larnick, signing Josh Bell, bringing in Caratini, etc. It's not adding versatility, and you need to be able to, if not, it's not like we're saying Keaschall's going to come off the bench and pinch hit, although, I mean, that could happen once in a while.
Sure.
It's that if Larnick is up with two guys on base in the eighth inning, and the other team brings in a left-handed reliever, as they should, to face him, you don't want Larnick to hit in that spot. You want to pinch hit, let's say, whoever off the bench.
Right.
And then if it's easier to go put someone else at second base and move Keaschall to left field, then that at least brings a level of versatility that allows you to at least pinch hit. Now, even within that, though, two things that I would say is, one, who are you pinch hitting off the bench as a right-handed bat?
Right.
If Keaschall's starting, then your best right-handed bat is either Austin
Austin
Martin,
Martin,
or Eric
Wanham.
Wagaman.
Yep, that's right.
So, okay, if it's Wagaman, you're going to have to then take him out of the game, put in your utility guy at second base, move Keaschall to left field. It's going to require some maneuvering to do that, but at least Keaschall being able to play the outfield gives you that option. The other part I wonder about, though, is even in game, or especially as a starting lineup, let's say a tough lefty's on the mound, and you don't want Wallner and Larnick in the outfield, or even at DH against a tough lefty. Okay, throw Keaschall in left field. That opens up second base to maybe put a different right-handed bat. The problem is, what right-handed bat do they have that can play second base?
They don't.
Garcia, Kreidler. I mean, those are right-handed bats.
Well, Austin Martin used to play there, but he's not working
Right.
out with that at second base.
Well,
Wagaman is playing a couple places in the infield, but ain't none of them up at the middle. It's what first and third, right?
Austin Martin, would be the most viable, but you would just play Austin Martin in left field and leave Keaschall at second base anyway.
Right.
So again, the versatility is theoretically good, and I think down the road it could help them in the future, either in game or just Keaschall being an outfielder most of the time or bouncing back and forth. But they don't really have the other half of that to fill in either at second base or to pinch hit, which again speaks to just the kind of disjointed connectivity of this roster that doesn't really exist. But I do think you will see Keaschall in the outfield. I mean, hell, if he could back up center field even occasionally.
That'd be amazing, right?
That might be too much to ask, but he could certainly be a good left fielder, play second. I think you might at some point see him play a little first base too, which he did in the minors while he was protecting his injured elbow and all that. So any versatility, particularly for a young player for whom you're still trying to figure out where they best fit defensively. It'd be one thing if Keaschall had looked amazing at second base. I'd be sitting here going, why are you even messing around with that? Leave him at second base. But Keaschall did not look amazing at second base. And the Twins, whether it's Culpepper coming up, who might end up at second base, or at least partly at second base, or it's Brooks Lee having to maybe move off of shortstop, going to either second base or third base. Second base is going to be in flux unless Keaschall shows a lot of improvement defensively. And the point at which it's in flux, even if that's 2027, 2028, etc., being able to bounce to the outfield, whether it's center or only left, it is a viable path to keep his bat in the lineup. Now, I'm hopeful, and I'm sure you are too, that Keaschall just looks a lot better at second base. He's another year removed from the elbow surgery. He's throwing without restrictions. He's had a chance to kind of get comfortable there in the majors. All I'm asking for him is to be decent there. Like I'm not expecting a Gold Glover there. If he's decent there, the overall profile plays. But if he continues to struggle with his arm, especially, kick him to left field and hope the bat, kind of fills up there.
Well, especially also as we take a look at some of the post-type prospects and where they're going to be, 4 months from now, that, it might very well be that we say, you know what, Culpepper's got to be up here. He's going to be a shortstop. Lee is hitting well enough. Maybe we want him at second base. Keaschall's defense hasn't been that good at second base. Let's have him in the outfield. They want that sort of versatility available to them as they're doing this. And frankly, you talked about where we are sort of in spring training. Well, yeah, everybody had those first 2 weeks, kind of got their feet underneath them, played some positions that they are used to playing, etc. Right now, what we are seeing from Shelton is a whole lot of mixing and matching and trying to see what he can do on there. And that lineup versus Puerto Rico on Wednesday had, Roden starting in center field. He'd never been there. Kreidler being in right field. We hadn't seen him in there for camp. We'd seen Arcia playing, third base. We saw, Gray playing shortstop, and we've seen Martin roaming around in center field, etc. Over time, we've seen Wagaman at third base, we've seen him at first base, a lot more of that. We've seen Caratini at first base a couple different times over this last week. This is the time where Shelton, who is, by the way, new to this team and new to these players, right, and getting a feel for what they can and cannot do, putting him out there, I think partly so he can get a read on it, and partly so that they can get used to playing there, so that that if something goofy happens in May and you've got to put Roden in center field, you want Roden to have played center field sometime this year, even if it was just in spring training. So
there's a lot of just trying to figure out what is viably in a player's toolbox.
Right.
Not that you will need it. I mean, Kreidler in right field is the greatest tell about this, right? Kreidler's probably the best defensive player, shortstop they have in camp.
Right.
He might be the best defender they have in the organization, high AA or above, let's say.
Right.
there's really no scenario, and he also can't hit.
Right.
So there is really
Yes.
no scenario
Right.
whatsoever where you would like willingly choose to play Ryan Kreidler in right field.
Right.
But if there's a bunch of weird stuff that happens during a game and you end up with like Arcia in the game at shortstop, but you need someone to play the outfield, well, Kreidler can at least play center field, left field, right field. He can play
Right.
anywhere. And giving him 6 innings there not only, gives him a little bit of repetition that he can, shake the dust off as a right fielder, but it also then creates a position where you can try some guy like Tristan Gray played shortstop instead of
Right.
Kreidler.
That's right.
It's not that they think Kreidler is a better shortstop. It's that they don't care about a spring training game.
Right.
So they want to expose guys to as much as they can on that front.
That game in particular had all 3 backup shortstops
Right.
playing someplace in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
You had Gray at shortstop, you had Arcia at third base, you had Kreidler in right field. The interest. I mean, I think they are just trying to stretch these guys and see where they can play and where they cannot play. It's always interesting when that happens to say, look at where they're hitting in the lineup, because then you also get a sense of like, well, which one do they think is the better hitter of these 3, right? And in that case, it was Arcia 6, it was Gray, I think 8, and Kreidler 9, which is about how I would think I would rank them, right? So yeah,
something like that. Yeah. We talked about Lee. We got actually, if you want to hear a good discussion about Brooks Lee and some of the changes he's made to his body and also the work he's put in defensively, and also a bigger picture discussion of what he can be and what, is realistic. We did like 15, 20 minutes with Matthew Leach about that on the Patreon side. So go patreon.com/Gleeman. My takeaway from that is just that there's a lot riding on Lee being better and quicker defensively, if only for like one more season at shortstop to sort of place hold until Culpepper is ready. But there's a possibility that Culpepper isn't a viable shortstop himself,
right,
and has to move to second or third, in which case maybe Lee gets 2 seasons until Merrick Houston is ready. Well, except even with Merrick Houston, who by all counts is a very, very good shortstop, Merrick Houston needs to show that he can be a major league hitter.
right.
Or even a AA and AAA hitter. And so it's possible Lee just kind of keeps playing that spot until someone knocks him off it, not unlike Jorge Polanco not so long ago.
Right.
Where no one thought Jorge Polanco was a good major league shortstop. But you went into every offseason being like, well, I guess he's still the shortstop. And then 3 months.
And he won an All-Star. He went there as an All-Star, right?
And so I'm not, obviously, Jorge Polanco would be a very good outcome for Brooks Lee, offensively and probably defensively. But it's not something you need to plan out in advance. And so it's possible that if Lee does show some improvement, is quicker, has, redistributed some of his weight, and just is moving better laterally.
Hits better left-handed.
Well, this is the other thing.
Yeah.
He needs to improve both, and I mean that's a tall order for a young player, especially. Yeah. There are so many guys for the Twins, and this has been part of their problem with like the Larnacks and the Wallners and stuff, where it's like, well, they were supposed to hit because they're not much of fielders, but then they don't really hit that much, and then they're just not good players. Lee takes that to an extreme. Like, I thought he was passable at shortstop down the stretch, in a way that it's like, was he a disaster? No. Do you feel comfortable that he's going to be a good shortstop? Also no. But the real issue is he just hasn't hit like anybody thought he would going to hit. I mean, that was the whole selling point of Brooks Lee, is that he was going to hit.
I mean, if he can hit, he doesn't necessarily have to stay at shortstop either. Exactly. He can play some of the other positions that we're trying to figure out here. So,
I mean, I think that's ultimately what we're going to. Brooks Lee's career with the Minnesota Twins is going to be very much tied to what happens this year. Can he show that he can at least hold down shortstop defensively until either Culpepper or Houston or whoever knocks him off of it, because there's no need to move him when the alternative is Ryan Kreidler or a over-the-hill Arcia or something like that.
Sure, right.
But then beyond that, I do still think what we saw of him at second base and third base is pretty good.
Yeah,
like I'm not saying he's going to win Gold Gloves there, but it's a completely different story than shortstop to me. But the question there is, you got Royce Lewis at third, you got Keaschall right now at second. Culpepper could end up at one of those spots.
Right.
Like those, not only is the bar higher for offense for hitting at those spots, and he's yet to reach that bar, and he needs to show that he can be that type of hitter. but there's just a lot more competition. The pool of candidates there is just always going to be deeper. And so that's why I think there's so much
the
riding.
guys who are already there have already exceeded what
Right.
he's ever done. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just think there's so much riding on Brooks Lee this season. And there's the opportunity absolutely for him. He's still young enough.
Sure.
He's still, it's not like he's played, 1,000 games in the majors or something. He's, has he shown some, cracks in the armor from what he was as a prospect? Absolutely. But that's what prospect evaluation is.
Right. That's right.
That's why guys like me rate AAA guys higher than single A guys, because we know weaknesses are going to be exposed, and why assume they aren't going to be? So now we've seen some of the weaknesses with Lee. Lateral movement, maybe not good enough to play shortstop. His plate discipline, very lacking. He's sort of giving away at bats. But we've also seen with him, he's looked pretty good at second. He's looked pretty good at third. His power has actually been surprisingly good, better than expected. And so it's not been all bad. And so I don't think he's that far off from sort of proving that he can be part of the Twins core, but also I don't know where that's going to be positionally.
Right,
and so I think there's a lot riding on this season.
I think there's a bunch of guys who have a lot riding on this season,
sure.
But he is definitely one of the key ones for sure.
He's one of the youngest and least experienced than the other guys.
You're right. You're right.
So I think there's a little less freezer burn. There's a little less motivation to give up at that point. And I also just think, whereas, if Larnach doesn't hit, well, he's already left field DH. If Wallner doesn't hit, he's already right field DH. Like, there's nowhere to go on the defensive spectrum.
Right.
Brooks Lee can slide to second and be a real good second baseman for 10 years if he shows enough offense to make it worth the while to do that. So I think that's why he's a little bit different. You mentioned Roden. He's looked good in camp.
Yeah.
It does seem, and you've been there now a week after I left, so maybe this has changed, but it does seem like Shelton likes him. Twins officials in general seem somewhat invested in him, not just because they believe in him, but because they traded for him in the Louis Varland trade last year. And the whole premise of that was he's major league ready. He was the only guy that they immediately put in the majors after the deadline. Now he played badly for 2 weeks and then had a season-ending thumb injury, so we didn't see much out of him. He's also 26. He's a 320 hitter at AAA. I don't know that there's that much to prove for him going back to St. Paul and playing there, but also because of the Larnach situation, right? He has options, and so.
That's right.
But now here's another complicating factor: James Outman, who is out of options, he is Outman of options. He looked terrible for the Twins after the deadline.
Yep.
And hasn't hit in the majors for the Twins or the Dodgers for the last couple of seasons. He's now showing something in camp
he is.
with a couple home runs.
Yep.
And he's getting plenty of playing time. He's playing center. He's playing the corners. And so now you not only have Larnach, who seems superfluous, you have Roden, who seemingly should be playing left field, but really can't because they have so many guys who could maybe back up center field, but that's tricky because it's like, is he only doing that a couple times a week? Would he be better off at AAA? And now Outman is trying to make a case and is out of options, so he can't be sent to AAA. And they also acquired him at the deadline last year too. So it's never a bad thing to have depth, but I just wish they had depth in other areas besides just left-handed outfielders.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, we've talked most of the offseason about wondering whether Larnach was going to be traded. We've talked most off seasons in the last 5 or 6 years about whether a left-handed hitting corner outfielder was going to get traded. They never are, right? They said they just could continue to be stacked up on this group. Yeah, coming into camp, my attitude was I'd kind of given up on Outman. I just hadn't seen enough to believe that this was going to be the year they turned it around. And as such, I thought, if they are, despite the fact that if he doesn't make the team, it means losing him. If they can bring themselves to do that, if they can bring themselves to give up on the guy they traded for, a couple weeks, well, then the roster starts to fit together a little bit better. It certainly doesn't fit very well together if Outman is on that roster. But now that Outman's actually doing some stuff, well, now it's a little different story, right?
Well, by the way, here's one other angle that you sort of mentioned. The risk of an out of options player is that if they're not on that all that means is they can no longer just be seamlessly sent to AAA back and forth.
Right.
And so if they're not on the opening day roster, they have to either be traded, placed on waivers where a team can just claim them for nothing in return, or released. And with Outman, like you said, the risk is, Well, if he doesn't make the opening day roster as a backup outfielder, you lose him for nothing. But I had been of the mind, and I have a similar opinion of Alex Jackson, the third catcher, who's due 1.3 million and is also, I think, out of options.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Would you lose them? Would they even be claimed off waivers?
Right.
And also, I mirrored your thoughts on Outman during the offseason, which is, do we care if we do lose him?
Right.
But now, he might pass through waivers and you can just send him to AAA and he's AAA depth, which is a great outcome for that,
Sure.
relatively. Except now he's playing well
Right.
and showing something in spring training. And weirdly, that means you're less able to pass him through waivers unclaimed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, the bench situation beyond for those last two bench spots, the non-backup shortstop, non-backup catcher bench spots has become increasingly hazy as opposed to more clear, I think, over this, in part because we're just seeing some good performances from some of the guys that are there. I'm still of the opinion that I think Austin Martin has to be on this roster just because he's got a lot. He brings the right-handed bat and he brings the potential backup center field stuff, etc. But if James Outman is also on this roster, well, then I'm not as sure that Austin Martin necessarily is the fit. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't really see how Roden and Outman can both be on the roster.
I don't either.
Same way.
No, I agree.
Martin is right-handed, but he does a lot of the same things. And then Larnach is, overlapping with the left-handed versions of these guys. So yeah, it is weird. Is this the highest?
And this is all assuming that A, everybody stays healthy, and B, everybody stays on the roster, that there's no trades. And we've seen the Twins make trades on the night before opening day. So you never know what some of these guys, what might happen to them. I will say this about Outman. If they decide they can't fit him on the roster, he just doesn't fit, right? Yeah. And he's had a decent spring, you could potentially move him to somebody that, get something in return for him as opposed to just putting him in the waivers.
You're not going to get anything. I mean, you might get cash considerations or something for him. But before we talk about some pitching stuff, let's talk about our last couple of sponsors here. This time of year, we love to tell you guys about RotoWire. John and I have been RotoWire users long before they ever sponsored this show.
That is correct.
I've used them for basketball drafts, football drafts, baseball drafts. Obviously,
I used them this last year to win my football league, Aaron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't recognize that league because I missed the playoffs by a game. I'm annoyed that you won. It makes it 10 times worse that you won.
I'll tell you how I did that. How you can use the same thing for baseball. You can sync your league to them. So you, rather than have to, kind of jump between their advice and the league, etc., you can go right into RotoWire. It has underneath your name there, you've got like, okay, are you in this league? You're in this league because you synced it up, and it syncs with just about everything. And then it'll say, okay, well, here's who we would start this week. Here's who is available on your waiver wire that you might want to pick up. Like, it does the analysis for you. And that's, obviously,
by the way, that's in season for the draft.
Yeah, right.
You can also do it so that whatever your custom scoring and roster rules are, it can give you cheat sheets that are not just generic, cheat sheets that you might get in a print magazine or something. It'll be updated, first of all, because their big thing is daily news. They're constantly updating the rankings, but it will take into account your scoring system. And so this time of year, everybody's starting to do their baseball drafts.
Right.
And RotoWire is perfect for that. Like we said, you can sync it to your league. You can sync it to whatever your rules are. I'm sure a bunch of the nerds listening to this are playing in OBP leagues or leagues that don't have steals, don't have saves. They're in, war leagues, whoever. You can sync up RotoWire to that. And if you use the promo code Gleeman when you sign up at rotowire.com, you can get 20% off any RotoWire subscription. That's rotowire.com. Use the promo code Gleeman, sync your league to it, do your draft. You'll definitely want to stick around for football, basketball, I guess hockey. I've never played fantasy hockey. But we have both used RotoWire for our writing, for our fandoms, for our various leagues for a very long time. They're also, by the way, a Minnesota company.
Yeah.
Which is, if people care about that, there's a little icing on that cake. So go to rotowire.com and use the code Gleeman, and you'll just get 20% off signing up. You can use it for all your fantasy baseball needs.
This next message is sponsored by Raycon. We've also been huge Raycon supporters for years because they just make really good headphones and they don't break your bank. And in particular, headphone buds or earbuds, right? Not the wired time, but the kind you got that you want to put in your ear. And now they've started making not ones that are just the buds that go in your ear, but they've got the open ear design. And where that comes in handy is like, well, especially when you get to like spring and you're walking around outside and stuff, and you want to be able to hear that there's a bicyclist behind you or something like that. The open air design allows you to hear your music, and they also can hear the world around you both at the same time. We've had some. I mean, listen, I think both of us have multiple members in our family with
Yes.
Raycon products in or around their ears right now. And it's because they are super well engineered and because they are reasonably priced.
My mother is probably power walking around a suburb of Minneapolis as we speak,
That's right.
wearing Raycon. So yeah, it's a new design for them, an alternative to kind of the traditional earbuds. And I will say, even in the house, one of the things I struggle with Becky
Yeah.
is we'll both be listening to something or whatever in a different room, and then like one of us will walk in and the other one will be talking to the like, hey, can you grab me a Diet Coke?
Right,
Or like,
yeah.
hey, I'm heading to the whatever, and it's just a constant one of us taking one out of our ear and going, what?
Yeah, that's
What?
right. Yeah, that's right.
This solves that. The
That's
open
right.
ear design. It's the essential open earbuds, perfect for refreshing your routine this spring. Go to buyraycon.com. That's BUY and then Raycon, RAYCON. Buyraycon.com/Gleeman Open. One word, Gleeman Open, and you get 20% off. Thank you to Raycon for sponsoring. That's go to buyraycon.com/Gleeman Open. Get your 20% off. Our sponsor, Raycon. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about pitching. You mentioned Bailey Ober. We'll get into that on Monday
Yeah.
after we actually see him. I agree with you completely that he's extremely important
Yeah.
to this team and sort of keeping
Well,
the foundation from crumbling further.
and
basically.
we've also did discover this week a little bit about the mystery has sort of been what's been going on. Why is he not in these games, right? And the answer was always, well, he's working on his mechanics. He's working on his mechanics. I think, that is also code for, well, wasn't showing the velocity he expected to be having, especially because he had worked on, trying to reestablish things throughout the offseason. And he says he was throwing 90 miles per hour in January and then, took the break just before coming to camp and came to camp, and suddenly things weren't, quote, syncing up correctly. Things weren't exploding out of his hand the way he expected. So I think what this did is they gave him a couple more weeks in non-game situations where, you get to control the environment a little bit. You know how many pitches you're going to throw. Now, that live BP that he had, that live batting practice, was against Twins hitters. It wasn't just throwing to a catcher. It wasn't a bullpen.
You're doing it again,
session.
John. People are going to see him pitch tonight. You don't have to tout what he is. I agree with you on all that.
Right. No, I'm
But
just,
if he-
I'm just explaining how we got to this point, and this
Yes.
is why the tonight's game stands out, because
Yes.
he's gone through the bullpen session, he's gone through the live BP session. Now we're going to see him in the game, and now we get to actually see what those velocity readings are
Right.
that have been a mystery to us
Now-
up to this point.
John, you know that we can see live BP velocities. It's on the scoreboard.
The scoreboard over on field 4.
No, but
Yeah,
you've
but
said this before, not
no,
about Bailey Ober,
No,
where
but
it's like mystery.
but they don't. They haven't put Bailey Ober in on these
this-
ones, and they haven't
this
put
is-
Joe Ryan on those. They're putting
this
him
is
over
where
on
you-
field 4.
This is where you use your journalistic chops, John, and mosey on over to someone with a radar gun and say, "What are we looking at here?"
Yeah, they've got the dude with the they've got the dude with the iPad
There's-
right there behind the thing. So-
Right. You don't even have to have a conversation. You just peek over someone's shoulder there and see. Nobody is throwing in a modern spring training environment, whether it's on the main field, whether it's in a game, whether it's on a backfield, without thousands of dollars of technology tracking their every move and spin and stuff. So the key is just being nosy. Really, that's the whole thing. I believe you have it in you to be that nosy person. John.
Yeah, there is a fence between me and them. That's part of the problem.
That just means you impress them with your climbing skills, that's how you charm them.
The 58-year-old climbing skills.
They go, I thought he'd be dead, but look at he climbed that whole fence.
58 years of climbing fences. I'm pretty good at it by now.
Well, I have heard stories from you about you climbing trees at Carlton. So
yeah, and how did that end up?
Well, you're alive. So one other thing we talked with Matthew quite a bit about, Matthew Leach on Patreon, was how the loss of Lopez and at least the temporary loss of Festa from the rotation mix has really sort of washed away the whole, they have so many starters that maybe how many will they send to AAA? How many will they convert to the bullpen? The answer now is they have basically 6 starters for 5 spots, and they need to go 3 more weeks without an injury.
Right.
They might just have 5 starters for 5 spots, or worse. And so now I feel like, it's very unlikely any of those starters get converted to the bullpen for opening day, because you need a 6th starter on call. You'd like to have 6, 7 starters on call. And so that would seemingly mean to me whoever doesn't get one of the 5 opening day rotation spots, the 6th guy, the odd man out, will go to AAA and keep pitching every 5th day, keep starting, keep stretched out, and basically just be one call away literally from joining the bullpen.
Right.
And so then when you start to do the math in that context, where there's really only, there's 6 people and there's 5 spots, you're playing musical chairs at that point. The path of least resistance from a age, experience, that sort of thing, is to just send Mick Abel to AAA. He's younger than the rest of the guys, Simeon Woods Richardson, Zebby Matthews, Taj Bradley, obviously Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober are in a different category probably. He's younger than all those guys. Not a lot, but he is younger. He has less major league experience than them. He has 39 innings. Simeon Woods Richardson's got 250 innings in the majors. Taj Bradley's got damn near 400 innings in the majors. Even Zebby's got almost, I think, 100 and something innings in the majors. And he has an option remaining. And you just acquired him 6 months ago, so it's not like he spent 3 years in St. Paul. So I do think the path of least resistance would be, you have Ryan and Ober as your veterans. You have Taj Bradley, Simeon Woods Richardson, and Zebby Matthews as your 3, 4, 5 in some order. It doesn't really matter. And then you send Abel as the 6th guy, the odd man out, to AAA. Go, shove against AAA hitters, which you've done before. I don't think he has much to prove there, but it's more just keeping him ready to jump in. Now, the one monkey wrench here is Mick Abel's looked pretty effing good here early in camp.
Yeah.
And, that is what it is. But if he has a couple more very impressive outings, that's not surprising in the sense that that's why they traded for him. The upside is not in doubt with Mick Abel. But as he has more impressive outings and he consistently throws strikes, that suggests they've done some good work with him mechanically and in terms of kind of harnessing his raw stuff, because control has been a big problem for him. I wonder, assuming everyone stays healthy, how impressive would he have to be over the next, 15 to 20 days for them to not send him to AAA and not take the easiest route where you have your 5 in the rotation, you have Abel as your 6th, and you move forward with that?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I think we will see him again tomorrow. That's about the next time he should be coming up. That will be another road game, and those road games are especially valuable because you're generally facing a better lineup, right? So we've seen Abel. He mowed right through the lineup that he saw here versus the Rays earlier this week, but that was also a split squad road lineup. Yeah. So it was not even a AAA quality lineup, but the outing before that was in Detroit facing basically their starting lineup. And he was dominant in that outing as well, really good in that outing as well. We'll see what he ends up facing if he ends up on the road tomorrow at Baltimore. I just want
to say one thing. It is probably sounds insane how people who cover spring training talk about the road sites, because we'll be like, oh, he was in Detroit. Or, oh, he was in Boston.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all Florida. Detroit is
That's
Lakeland,
right.
Florida.
That's right.
Boston is across the street, basically
That's
from.
right. That's
But
right.
yeah, that's how you go. Oh, I'm not going to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh,
For pitchers, generally they face a better
yes,
lineup when they are on the
100%.
road. Right.
I just
that's the
don't want to
important
comment
part.
from someone going, they weren't in Detroit, they're in Florida. Yeah,
Sorry.
our brains are mushed in
Oh
certain
yeah,
ways.
that's right. That's right. I have trouble keeping track of what's Ed White Stadium. Where is that? Is that I don't even remember where that is in for where the Baltimore plays. But anyway, the Bradenton? No, Bradenton's Pittsburgh. Anyway,
Yeah.
you know, we kind of tried to sort of create a hierarchy of, likelihood of making this rotation, right? And I think we probably put him and Zebby at the lower end of the likelihood to make that rotation as opposed to Bradley and Woods Richardson, in part because those two just have had more innings and more experience and, frankly, more success, a better track record at this point. I mean, here's the thing. Zebby's look great too. So I mean, at some point you can say, well, how good does he have to look? Well, at the very least, he has to probably look a lot better than, somebody else. And so it's not a purely based on just his performance. If the other guys are, looking really good too, I'm not sure that it's going to matter how dominant Abel looks in this. There just might not be room.
And I have no problem with that. I think so much is made, and we're guilty of this too, of the opening day roster of, who's the fifth starter. The reality is, I think we've seen pretty much every year the past 3, 4, 5 years with the Twins, and this is true of most teams, by the end of April, sometimes, hell, by the first week in April, the 6 starters in the rotation because somebody's hurt or somebody's underperforming, especially the Twins, I don't think are that unique. They do not treat the opening day roster as being set in stone. I mean, I would put the over-under on days before somebody is removed from the 26-man roster as like 3. Like basically after their first series, which is in Baltimore, I would probably bet that there's some level of, roster move. And so it's not that big of a deal if Mick Abel has to go to AAA for what I would guess would be at most a month before he's needed. Because the reality is, if it's a month before he's needed, that's actually sort of a good thing because that means the rest of the rotation is somewhat healthy. So it's not a bad thing. And ultimately, if you want the team to succeed at all this year, you are going to need 6, 7, 8, probably 10 starting pitchers. Now, if you're mostly just invested in the development of Mick Abel, then maybe you say it's better for him to be in the majors, but I could also make an argument if they've changed some things mechanically, you want him to sort of get some momentum going and then join the rotation. So I have no problem with that. I think it's probably, we talk about it because it's a battle for a roster spot and it is important. I think this is one of the most important things, like that group of starters succeeding or failing this year is just massively important. But I don't think if you're a Mick Abel fan, I don't think you should be that discouraged at all, really, if he starts the year in AAA.
We also talk about it as a battle for a roster spot because it's a fairly defined battle for a roster spot, right? The other roster spots, which are also battles, are so much less defined. The bullpen is. I don't have any idea what that roster battle looks like right now. I know there's 8 spots, and we could probably name 5 of them, something like that. But beyond that, it's a little bit of a grab bag as to what is going to end up being on that. And even the outfield spots that we already just dedicate some time to is sort of like, well, we think, these 3 guys are competing for one spot. And then, I don't know, they're going to mix and match 2 other spots. Like, I don't know. So this one is easier to talk about. And that's probably one of the reasons we talk about it. We fall into that trap. But yeah, it's not a bad thing if any of those guys end up starting the year at AAA and they have that depth. So.
On the bullpen, one development there, Liam Hendricks finally got into a game a couple days ago, through 93, 94, maybe topped out at 95, something like that, which is, it's down from where he was at his peak, but that's within a mile or two of where he's been the last 2 or 3 years. Now, I would also note he hasn't pitched well or stayed healthy for the last 2 or 3 years. When he was really thriving and making all-star teams as a closer, he was throwing 97, 98, but he's also 37 years old. So even if without the injury component, he'd probably be, a lesser velocity now. I think if he's at this level of velocity, or maybe, another little bump from that 2 weeks from now, I have no doubt he will be on this roster. If he is healthy, if he is reasonably healthy, like there's no big issue, no setback, and he's throwing 94, he will absolutely make this team. And I might even say he'd be the closer.
When we talked to him a couple of days ago, his basic response was, provided I feel good tomorrow after that outing,
Yeah.
he's feeling pretty good about where he is. And indications are he felt fine because he's again probably pitching again tonight, 3 days later. So
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good sign that they've got faith in at least in his health. You're right. He would probably prefer to be. He said, ultimately he'd like his velocity to be up to like 97, 98, something like that. But just to have hit 90, 93, 94 consistently and to have touched 95. Not a bad place for him to be at this point. And most importantly with him, he's doing it without his arm hurting. Right. So, that's a good sign.
On the bullpen overall, it's so funny how our thinking on the bullpen has shifted from the beginning of the offseason. The beginning of the offseason, it was like, they need so much bullpen help. That might be the biggest thing they need to pursue during the offseason, whether it's free agency, whether it's trade, whether it's converting starting pitchers to the bullpen. They absolutely need, and then they just didn't. Right.
Yeah.
And so then late in the game here, as spring training was getting underway, they had signed Taylor Rogers. They bring in Chafin. They make a small trade for Bonda from the left side. They add a bunch of NRI type of guys, and then they sign Liam Hendricks, who we just talked about too. I still think the bullpen is woefully short. That's just subjectively how I view it. But it's no longer short on like bodies. Like you can. If anything, I think Funderburk might be in danger of being sent to AAA.
I agree.
And I think like we just talked about, they're not even converting starters to the bullpen anymore at this point. Yeah. But here's the other thing about that. As I look at the bullpen, one of the things we were like, okay, well, they're going to try to convert a Zebby to the bullpen, let's say, or a Festa to the bullpen, or a Marco Raya to the bullpen, or, Connor Prelip, some of these young starters. And one of the things early on in the offseason, before they had done anything, we were like, well, it wouldn't hurt them to have a Taylor Rogers type or Liam Hendricks type to both provide a veteran arm, but also a veteran presence to show these guys how to be relievers, to sort of be a mentor for these guys. But then they went so far in that direction, the whole bullpen is built out of the old guys now.
Right. Yeah.
Like there aren't even guys there are no mentees to have.
Right. No, you're
like, even, I don't know, Cole Sands is like 28 years old. Like he's the youngest guy in that group. Yeah. And so it is a very weird spot to be in where it's both not, in my mind, not a good bullpen. It's filled with but it's also filled with a bunch of like 1 year flyer old guys where it's just, incredible amount of experience, but also there is no kind of clubhouse dynamic, mentorship dynamic. Maybe at midseason you bring Prelip up and he is attached at the hip to Taylor Rogers or something like that. But like there are no young guys to be shepherded into their life in the bullpen by these old guys. You just have old guys.
Yeah.
And it's a weird place to be, I think.
I thought we would maybe see a bullpen where we had, a couple of veterans and then a lot of young arms that were getting ready, and we were hoping that one or two of them would break through. And then suddenly we've got some high leverage arms in our bullpen. And I don't really see that being the case anymore for whatever happened, right? I do think, I just said we don't have a great view of the bullpen. I think we've got 6 names that we think are going to be in the bullpen of the 8 names, right? We've got, from the right side, we've got Topa, and we've got Sands, right? And I think we've got Hendricks now, right? And from the left side, I think we've got the 3 lefties, and I'm not including Funderburk in there. We've got Rogers, and we've got Banda, and we've got Chafin right now, I think. Those last 2 spots, I think I agree with you. I think Funderburk is probably in danger of being sent down, although if he continues, if they really think he can actually get some righties out, maybe he ends up as sort of the swing guy, the 8th guy in the bullpen that ends up eating some innings or something like that.
You cannot have 4 mediocre lefties in a bullpen. You just can't.
But what you really can't have is like 3 mediocre lefties that are all going to be used strictly for lefties. You know what I mean?
That's what makes them mediocre. That's what I'm saying. You can't,
right.
You can have 4 lefties if 2 of them can pitch the 8th and the 9th inning, no matter the matchups. You cannot play matchups with 4 different lefties over the course of 162 games. There just aren't that many opportunities. I would probably argue, and I'm not even that big of a Funderburk believer at this point.
Right.
I feel like there was a place for a Chafin type of pickup if you didn't already have a 35-year-old Rogers and a 35-year-old Bonda.
Yeah.
But he is so like repetitive at that point that I almost would be like, what is Chafin providing for this team that Rogers and or Banda aren't providing? Whereas Funderburk could at least give you something that for the future, if he has a good season, he could be around for next year.
That's kind of my point on why I think Funderburk can be in the team, though, right? Is that the odd person out is the 3 guys who we have to use against lefties, right? And Funderburk, who might have a little more utility than that, he can go a little longer, can face right-handers a little better, might have some reason to be in there, and maybe I think the way they could end up looking at it is Rogers is good enough to face either side, which I think is a stretch, but
he used to be,
right? Yeah, used to be, right? Exactly right. Used to be, right? The other 2 are mostly lefty specialists, and then Funderburk is your swing, your swing man essentially, down, an innings eater down there.
That's not what he does. He doesn't throw 3 innings.
Yeah,
that's another issue. Is you need somebody to throw bulk innings here.
Yeah, especially because you've also got, I think John Klein kind of might fit on that piece too. And bottom line is, I think those 6 guys are in, and then I don't know who 7 and 8 are right now, and I don't, and I think you could give me 6 names, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't know. Is it Adams? Is it Klein? Is it Funderburk? Is it Orza, who I haven't even put in Orzi, sorry, or Kent, who they just picked up? Like, I don't really have a good sense of what those last 2 look like.
It's not gonna be Klein on the opening day roster, I don't think. But
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I mean, you said we have a good view, and what you meant was we have a good handle on this.
Right.
It is not a good view. Like, you know what I mean? It's like someone invites you over to the house, they open the drapes, they go, isn't it a lovely view? And it's just a brick wall. It's like, well, yeah, I guess.
I understand what I'm seeing. I just don't, all right.
You have a full look at this wall.
Yeah.
It's just a dirty brick wall, basically. Says a guy who lives over a parking lot, by the way.
Yes.
So I'm not one to really
I've seen that view.
Yeah, it's a great view, theoretically.
Of a parking lot.
Yeah, of a parking lot. It's amazing. Last couple things, and we'll shut up here. We mentioned Walker Jenkins, diagnosed with a strained hamstring. They're saying it's on the minor side, but with 2 or 3 weeks left of spring training, he's not going to appear in games. So they sent him officially to minor league camp. He won't be able to play in minor league camp for a while, but that's why if people are like, whoa, they sent down Walker Jenkins in the first round of real cuts, it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they had previously sent Cantorino and Corey Lewis because they're hurt. Jenkins was not going to be in competition for a roster spot, obviously, on opening day. But I do think, much like Emmanuel Rodriguez and Kalen Culpepper, who were not sent down in that first group of cuts, probably if he were healthy, he might have held on for a little bit longer. But it's ultimately, it's pretty meaningless for a guy in that situation, because the truth is, if they want him to play in Major League spring training games, they can just bring him over from minor league camp and he can play. There's no restrictive nature to that. It's more, you start to pare down the clubhouse. You start to kind of make it feel more like a competition, as opposed to having guys in the clubhouse who are not realistically fighting for opening day jobs. And that's kind of part of the paring down process of spring training.
I think the primary benefactor of that right now is Hendry Mendez. Hendry Mendez is getting a lot of time in that same outfield with Emma Rodriguez and Gabriel Gonzalez right now. And Mendez was probably slated to move up to AAA this year after the numbers he put up at AA, both with the Phillies, right? And then with the Twins. And, when where it hurts Jenkins in terms of not being able to play, I mean, obviously he's hurt, so he probably wasn't going to be playing anyway, right?
Yep.
But where it hurts is, like, a lot of those guys will go on the road. And they will play innings, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 7, 8, and 9 on the road to fill in for, whoever, all the different guys that are battling for the front bench spot. This second, or this first week of March, and the second release of players to minor league camp or assignment of players to minor league camp is often sort of like prospects we wanted to take a look at, and now we are done taking a look at them, and we got to get serious about our roster. And one of the more interesting things about this spring training camp is uh, a lot of those prospects are AAA ready. And then they are already, they want to continue to keep getting a look, and they want to keep getting them experience facing, some of the better players, because this is they're going to potentially be in the majors later this year. And so, even though they are top prospects, they were not sent down because they are on the cusp of making the team or being called up to the majors. And so, and that doesn't mean, by the way, that they're sticking around, that they've got any chance of making the opening day roster. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that everybody wants to continue to get a look at them, and they want to continue giving those players experience versus high level competition. So they're all getting to stay in spring training for at least another week or so.
I would probably expect whenever the next round of cuts,
Maybe.
Culpepper will probably be included in that. The other thing is that AAA spring training games are a thing too.
Right,
and those will start up more often, and then you're going to want your AAA guys just playing against AAA competition at that point. We can finish on this. Speaking of prospects and all that, so MLB.com put out their farm system rankings, and so they are the last of what I would say is 6 prominent national outlets who do that sort of thing. And so I thought it was interesting to compare and contrast now the 6 outlets. So I'll read those. Let me find them. I wrote them down. Okay, so here's the Twins ranking. And again, this is farm system rankings. And keep in mind, in the Twins case, Luke Keaschall is no longer eligible for these because he's not considered a prospect. Mick Abel is not eligible for them, let alone, the Brooksleys of the world and all that sort of. Festa, Matthews, Bradley, none of these guys are included. It's true prospects. So of this, what I would consider the 6 major national outlets, ESPN ranked the Twins 8th out of 30 teams.
Okay.
Baseball Prospectus ranked them 8th out of 30. MLB.com, which also goes by MLB Pipeline, ranked them 9th out of 30. Just came out yesterday. Fangraphs has them number 12 out of 30. Baseball America, which has been and still is the most prominent prospect outlet, has them number 12 out of 30. And so you would say there's 5 very prominent places. They're between number 8 and number 12. So that seems about right to me. I think when we talked about my list earlier, I said they're around the 10 range. So I think that's about right. Then you have The Athletic, which is a great place, but doesn't think as highly about the Minnesota Twins farm system and ranks them 21st out of 30. And when I posted these on Twitter yesterday, I had a bunch of people go, man, why do you hate the Twins? Thinking that I'm The Athletic.
Right.
I am the Twins writer at The Athletic. I am not our national prospect writer / ranker. That is Keith Law. And so that ranking is just Keith Law's personal opinion. And I'm not saying just like to diminish it or anything.
Sure.
And if you go look at, I think it was about a month ago, he put out his farm system rankings. And it started with, actually, let me find it. Athletic farm system. Here we go. I'm going to just read it to you because I think this will answer a lot of questions people have. He has a blurb on every team, basically, paragraph or 2 on every team. So the Twins are ranked 21st. Here is how his blurb on the Twins farm system begins, Keith Law. Quote, the Twins would be much higher if they could just keep their best guys healthy. Now, that's impossible to disagree with.
Right.
Jenkins is hurt now again and has been hurt.
Yep.
Emmanuel Rodriguez has been hurt. Connor Prelip has been hurt. On and on and on. And even guys they've graduated to the majors have almost all gotten injured. Well, prospects. And so if there is a sense of the Twins struggle to keep their guys healthy, whether through something they're actually doing or not doing, or just pure bad luck,
right? Until
they can show that they can advance these guys to the majors, like Jenkins being a prime example, without constant, muscle strains and tears and all that stuff, then I do think it's not that unreasonable to view them. Let's say if you viewed them as the 12th best just on talent, which is in line with the other ones, but you knock them down a half dozen spots or so because of the health factor. Now, with that said, I certainly think they have better than the 21st ranked farm system, but they don't if 4 of their 5 top guys can't stay healthy. So that, I know I got a lot of questions about that. In general, though, this is, I would say, so I don't contribute to the overall farm system rankings. I cover the Twins prospects. So I write my annual article, I rank them, all that. I don't know as much as I once did about other farm systems because I used to write about national stuff for other places. But it's my sense that I generally agree with that 8 to 12 range, that they're, if they're top 10, but not, top 5 type of thing. But I do think the thing you mentioned earlier, and something we've talked quite a bit about, we talked to Derek Shelton about this on the Patreon show. There is in my view, especially how I like to evaluate prospects, there is a like bonus where I would consider a 12th ranked farm system better or worse based on how many of those guys are near the majors.
Right.
Because you could be a number 10 farm system and have no guys at AAA.
Right.
It's just all low minors, high upside, boom or bust. You're hoping you hit on a couple of them, but a couple of them might wash out. But you can also be a top 10 farm system where you just have all your guys at AAA. And that's much closer to what the Twins have, like you were just talking about, or we were talking about with the later cuts and stuff. So I would tend to view them more favorably than that. If the consensus is that they're in that 10 to 12 range, I would probably say, in my mind, they're probably maybe in the 8 to 10 range, small difference or whatever.
Sure.
But I mean, I do think that is really the only. There's a lot of bad crap looming over this season, right? In terms of ownership, fan morale, the roster, Buxton, the trade deadline, all of it. We talk about it. One of the only good things, but it is a big good thing, is no matter how bad this season gets, and no matter how much they trade off, and no matter what, I do think by the end of this season, you're going to get a pretty decent look at a lot of young guys who can be part of the next good Twins team if things go well. And if nothing else, can set themselves up to be on the opening day roster in 2027. So that this time next year, we're talking about things building up instead of maybe tearing down again. You know what I mean?
I'm probably not as optimistic as you are on that particular. Just because we've seen, waves, maybe not as big of a wave, but smaller waves like this sort of go through. And what we've seen is them sort of stall out at this level. If anything, what I'd say mostly what I'm going to be kind of optimistic about is, can we see that level of prospect, which I think is as a higher level of prospect probably than we've seen sort of at, come through in these previous waves, hit at the same time that the guys that have stalled out also figure out a couple of things. And I don't mean like, we're going to go 4 for 4 on, Lewis and Lee and Wallner and Larnick all, figuring things out. But we get 2 of those guys and we get 2 of the other guys and so on. And maybe 2 of the other guys figure it out. I have gotten to the point now where I can't see these prospects come up and expect them to be very good for their first 2+ years, right?
I'm not saying they're going to come up and be impact players.
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about with the trade deadline sell-off.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is, and I agree with you, I mean, their recent track record of developing, turning prospects into good major leaguers has been pretty bad.
Yeah.
What you're describing is kind of like what we saw in 2023, where you had the end of the core group that had been there, and then you added Royce Lewis, Matt Wallner, and Eddie Julian.
Right. Yeah.
And they provided a boost and got you to the playoffs and all that. I'm not even saying I'm counting on the prospects performing well. All I'm saying is no matter how bad this gets, because if it does get really bad, a lot of those existing major leaguers are just not going to be part of the picture. But then can you start to piece together a lineup that is, you got Jenkins, Rodriguez, Gonzalez, let's say, even if you trade Buxton, that could be your outfield. You got maybe Brooks Lee at somewhere other than shortstop. You got Kalen Culpepper. You got Luke Keaschall somewhere. I mean, you could have a second base, shortstop, third base of those 3 guys. Like, I'm not saying it will be immediately good, but I'm saying there is at least the idea of, because I feel like right now, part of the reason it's tough to get enthusiastic about this team, one is just a talent deficit, but the other is a feeling that they're not moving in either direction right now, right? Like they're just trying to sort of, and the bullpen is a great example of this, I think, where they're just like sort of placeholding until they can figure out if this season's going to be okay or really bad.
Yeah, right.
And
a lot of one-year veterans that are just going
to maybe it is really bad, but then I feel like at least down the stretch this year and at this time next year, you can start to go, well, okay, now the question, it's not that I'm certain all these young guys are going to come up and immediately build a contending lineup or anything, but at least you can start to go, okay, now we're trying to build something, and maybe the blocks you're using to build are deficient, and you just end up building something that's not that good,
Right.
which is kind of what you're saying. But like, I do feel it is limiting from like a fan standpoint to not even be sure that even if the team is sort of okay this year, that they're building towards anything, because there is a sense that like there's still a few more things to send out before you kind of commit to what is going to be a rebuild. And it's partly because they just refuse to say the word rebuild, which I think adds to kind of what I'm talking about.
Well, and they're not really acting like like a full rebuild either. Now, if they end up trading away, a Ryan and a Ober and a Jeffers and a, God forbid, a Buxton, well then there's no, doesn't matter what you call it. I will say this about both this discussion and the discussion we had earlier about when the prospects come up, how much impact will they have in the after the trade deadline, etc. It does feel like a lot of this season is going to be sort of sorting through things.
Yes.
I thought I expected that in spring training, and I'm seeing a little bit of that. It's clear that Shelton is trying to sort through what his bench is going to look like, what the bullpen is going to look like, even what the rotation is going to look like, given the injuries that they've had, right? But I feel like that is going to be a constant struggle or a constant challenge this year to try and figure out, okay, so-and-so is doing well. So-and-so at AAA is doing really well. So-and-so here is not doing well. How are we going to balance these things? How much faith do we have? How much more do we want to invest in this level versus that level? And how much do you want to do that investment in the middle of a, potentially competitive AL Central, where nobody is necessarily going to be running away with it?
Yeah.
It feels like this is going to be, of all the different twin seasons we've had, this is going to be the season of gray. There's going to be so many gray areas that we're going to be trying to figure out which way they should go on this or the other thing, and they're going to be doing it with a new head of baseball ops, a new owner, and a new manager as well. So,
I agree with all that. It's funny to me that you're like, I'm not really optimistic about these young guys, but then in the scenario you just laid out, it was, what do they do if the existing guys are good and the guys at AAA are good?
maybe, right?
And it's
we'll
like,
because otherwise there's not really a shade of gray there, right? If the guy up here stinks and the guy at AAA is great, then there's no question, right? But there's a problem if they're both stink, or the guy up here stinks and the guy down there is treading water.
I think the more likely thing with the Larnachs and the Wallners and those type of guys, maybe even Royce Lewis, is what do they do if the major league guys are just kind of okay?
Right, a 108 OPS plus.
Right, Wallner's hitting 240 with some power. Larnach's hitting 260 with less power. Royce Lewis has been sort of healthy, but still dinged up, and he's hitting 270 with 12 homers or something like that. And let's say the AAA guys, some of them are doing really well, some are doing okay, whatever. Yeah. Like, it's easy if the AAA guys are just crushing it to be like, all right, well, make room. Here we go.
Yeah, that's it.
New era.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult if either the major league guys are putting up a fight in that regard, or if, Kalen Culpepper's at AAA and he's hitting 250.
Right. Yeah.
Then it's like, well, okay, we could use him at third base, second base, shortstop, whatever. And, it's time to see what he can do. But also, is that doing him a disservice? Or, injuries, obviously, with Jenkins and Rodriguez and stuff. But I guess I think the most likely scenario is collectively most of the existing major league guys, especially on the lineup side, are just doing sort of okay and not well enough from let's use Larnach as the example, to where you go, oh, he's going to be on 2027 too.
Right.
And then I think it's like, all right, when do we start to transition this? And it's not like there needs to be an NHL style shift change. Right. It's not like they have to call up Jenkins, Gonzalez, Rodriguez, and Culpepper on the same day or anything.
Right.
That'd be fun. That'd be a fun Uber from St. Paul, from Lower Town over to Target Field or whatever. It can be a gradual thing, and I would also put Keaschall in that group too. Like, Keaschall's different in that he's no longer a prospect. But I mean, we haven't seen that much of Luke Keaschall, and we also haven't seen Luke Keaschall healthy yet. And so the fact that he's been as impressive as he is, at least offensively and in terms of base running, if you add him to the group of Jenkins, Rodriguez, Culpepper, and Gonzalez, and you add Luke Keaschall, then you have 5 lineup spots. Now you got to figure out where they're playing.
Right.
And maybe Brooks Lee, who I would view as probably the most likely to cement himself as a future core guy just based on his age and years of team control, that could be a sixth guy at that point. And if Buxton sticks around, then you got 7 guys. Then you're just figuring out catcher and like DH or something. And again, I'm not saying 2027 they're going to set the world on fire, but to me, it just seems important to at least be able to convey realistic view to the fan base of, they're at least building something forward now instead of just sort of trying to tread water. And that is going to be a lot of the season, and that can certainly go bad, like you've said. If it goes bad, if the prospects are hurt and the major league guys are struggling, and then it's like, okay, now are we just rebuilding for 3 years down the road? Like, what is the possibility there? But all right, that's enough talk from us. John's got to go watch Bailey Ober so we can talk about him Monday on the Patreon side. Right. Thank you to our sponsors, and especially obviously to our presenting sponsor, Black Stack. Go check them out. Great place to drink beer, or go find them on the shelves of your local liquor stores. Black Stack, good stuff. Alcoholic, non-alcoholic, hazies, right. IPA, anything you could want.
THC stuff too. So, okay, that's right. Thank you very much. We will talk to you again next Friday on the free show or on the YouTube channel. If you haven't checked that out, you can see the lovely radio station 3 with the guards that doesn't
We're
open.
Sexier than ever, people. We really are.
And otherwise, we'll see you at patreon.com on Gleeman. Patreon.com/Gleeman on Monday. Bye-bye.
There you go.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.